So in the early hours of this morning, Moscow had hundreds of drones enter its airspace. They claim to have shot all of them down, but there are videos of burning cars and burning videos all over the internet that were filmed by residents in Moscow, and it looked like a lot of stuff got through. And this is really significant because this is the largest attack Moscow has really been under, at least since 2022. And it's happening during the peace talks in Saudi Arabia. And there's a few different ways to look at this. One, a lot of the right-wing MAGA type people are going to say that this is escalation. You know, if Russia puts ballistic missiles here into Ukraine, as they do all the time, 35 the other day, hundreds and hundreds of drones every night, that's not escalation. Russia, who decided to illegally invade this country, I'm standing here in Hostomel right now, all the buildings are obviously destroyed, the Russians actually occupied this place, and I'm here with Mike Goldsworthy showing him around. But then, you know, that's not escalation. But in a lot of ways, this is good because people who are influential, wealthy people, people who know Putin, people in government who live in Moscow, who live in the affluent areas of Moscow, will have woken up in the early hours of this morning by the sounds of explosions, and they won't have felt safe, and they'll probably be pretty pissed off at Putin, to be quite frank. And this is because Russia brought the war to Ukraine. Russia started this war and they brought it, and most people in Moscow aren't feeling safe right now, and they're not, because actually Russia's air defenses are pretty crap. They don't work very well. A lot of stuff definitely got through, despite the lies that the Kremlins have put out saying that everything was shot down. It looked like a lot of this stuff was launched over Kursk. And Russia's a big country, and you can't have air defense over a giant country the size of Russia. So I think this is happening right now because Trump has been saying that Ukraine is lost. Trump has been saying that Ukraine is weak and Ukraine can't win this war. And Ukraine has just shown that they can put hundreds of drones into Moscow, and Russia is actually much weaker than we give it credit for, than MAGA give it credit for. And so this is incredibly humiliating for Russia right now. It's incredibly humiliating for Putin, who has, since the beginning of the invasion, and actually since the conception of Russia, since he's been in power, been putting out this constant image of a strong nation, a strong man, you know, imperial Russia. And it's not true. You know, Russia is a weak country. The GDP of Russia is smaller than Texas and smaller than a lot of countries in Europe. And actually, it's not that strong militarily either, despite spending 47% of its GDP on this despicable invasion. They're not that strong. And last night, Ukrainians showed the world that, that they're not that strong. And it is, you know, kind of cathartic in some ways as well. I've been a journalist in Ukraine for 2 years. I've been living in Kyiv for the last 8 months, and I have heard countless explosions over my house. I've seen the children's hospital in the center of Kyiv targeted and hit with missiles. And so when Russians get a taste of their own medicine in the capital of Moscow, then actually it's quite hard to have any sense of sympathy for them. I certainly don't at this point. And it's also different because when Ukrainians target Russia, they target military objects, they target government buildings, and they target strategic areas, right? Oil refineries that are used to power the war machine. They target the launch sites where planes take off that bomb Ukrainian schools and hospitals, right? They target military areas, and that's very likely what happened last night. And anyone that thinks there's two sides to this can look at the fact and just Google very, very quickly. When Russia targets Ukraine, they hit schools and hospitals, they hit civilian infrastructure, they hit civilian buildings. And as a result of what has just happened, the Russian state media and a representative of the Russian government has just released a statement saying that they are going to use Orshinik missiles in retaliation for what happened last night. So I imagine the next few nights here in Ukraine are going to be very, very loud. But again, this is what Russia's done anyway. So a lot of the time, either it's empty threats or they launch something pretty big. So I don't really know exactly what's going to happen next. I don't know how Russia's going to retaliate, but they've already been putting out pretty severe threats, and Russians really don't like it when Moscow gets hit. So we'll see what happens next. But also, this is good to happen during the peace talks, again, because the peace talks are going to be about how Ukraine you know, if you've listened to what the Americans are saying, Ukraine is weak and pathetic, Ukraine can't defend itself, Ukraine is useless. You know, that's basically what Elon Musk and Trump is saying. And actually everyone in that room will have read the news reports that Moscow was hit with 360 drones last night. So maybe Ukraine isn't as weak as Trump is trying to put out. So I think as a strategy, it was a pretty good one. Makes Ukraine look strong and makes Ukraine look like it can defend itself and fight back, most importantly. So it's interesting. It's an interesting time. And this, I mean, again, this is the biggest attack that Moscow has experienced. Probably ever, well, in the last, 100 years or something. And we're going to be hearing a lot more about it. We will, again, if you check the news, be careful what you're going to be reading, because you're going to be reading a lot of bullshit of people saying, oh, this is escalation, Ukraine's escalating things, Ukraine's hitting Moscow. Remember, anyone who says that, if you ever hear that from another person, it's complete garbage, because Russia started this invasion in 2014. They tried it again in 2022. Again, they were here. They were actually occupying these buildings behind me. And they have been bombing the shit out of Ukraine continuously for the last 3 years. So yeah, when Ukraine fires back for one night, any idea that that's escalation is complete garbage. All this is basically showing the world that Ukraine is still strong, that it can still defend itself as it can. I mean, Kyiv is still standing. The front line is moving, obviously, not in the best directions in some areas, but in other areas, like in Kursk, the Ukrainians are making advances. And again, looking at how weak Russia is, Putin said that he would take Kursk back in a month. And every single month that's gone by in the last 5 months since Kursk has been taken by the Ukrainians, Putin has pushed back the goalposts. He said, oh, we'll have it back in December. We'll have it back by Christmas. We'll have it back by New Year's. We'll have it back by January. We'll have it back by the inauguration. We'll have it back by this period. And they kept saying that they'd have it back, and they still haven't got it back, despite bringing in the North Koreans and all the Iranian and Chinese missiles. So Ukraine is actually in a good position, and it's stronger than ever. This country now has basically the largest army in Europe, the largest active army. And last night was just a show of strength, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think that will add to these peace talks. And one of the last things that's happened as well is Zelensky has said that, Zelensky went to Jeddah and he left before speaking to the United States representatives, because you know what, there's actually nothing to say to them, because the US has abandoned Ukraine entirely. Trump's delegation have absolutely no interest in peace, and they never did, and they didn't the second before Zelensky set foot in the Oval Office. So this is a super interesting time. I haven't been reporting on the ground as much in the last few days, and this is just a very quick video, just my reaction to what's going on, because I've been showing Mike Goldsworthy, a really good friend of mine, around Kyiv. I've been showing him Bucha, the mass graves today, and a lot of the time stuff I do kind of behind the scenes is actually showing people from back home what's actually happening here in Ukraine, so that they can come back home and report it to their followers too. So I've been doing that. But anyway, interesting times. Let's see what Russia's going to do next. I'll see you next time.